Shut that open.
I think it's too hot to open them on the north side.
Thank you. I'd like to call this August 1st Select Board meeting to order at 5:35. First item of business are the Select Board minutes and the orders. We have minutes for 2 July 18th meetings. I would entertain a motion to accept both minutes, and then we can talk about them separately.
Make that motion that we accept the meeting minutes for July 18th as presented and the meeting minutes for the executive session on July 18th as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I'm very glad that there's all those, these all those, we have to see July 18th, 28th. Anything else up to the 18th?
Like, what was the comment?
It says that
Item
we accepted the
one.
orders to July 28th to the 18th.
Okay. So I have a comment. So originally Cheyenne put this together. It was about 5 people that, there was a fair amount of people in the audience last time. Only the first names came through. So anybody with just the first name we took out of the minutes. I would just remind everybody that when they enter in, they should do their first and last name. And particularly when they address stakeholders, should get the first and last name. Or it only has to be those that actively participate in the meeting. So right now we put everybody that attends. So we either need to just put the actively attending ones or make sure we get the full names, because there's 4 to 5 people that got left out.
Okay, well, let's get through these minutes, and then I'll ask if there's anyone out online that has a first name.
Right now, everybody has their first name.
Okay, thank you. Other changes to the July 18th meeting one.
Bill, for the executive session,
Yes.
I would recommend that, so we made the motion, and it was seconded to appoint John Magliocco, and Jim Riley seconded it, and they had Robin Mosher, I believe.
Yeah, Amanda made a motion.
Yeah.
Robin.
I would amend those just for the record to include that John Magliocco took the seat that Jim Riley actually held prior. The term ends in 2025. And that Robin Mosher took the seat that John Dumas had held prior. And the term expires in 2024.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's fine. I would just ask, do we need to have that officially part of the motion, or is it just a straight thing?
It should come from you guys so that we can put it in the minutes somewhere. So if you want to amend it just to include that language, would probably be best rather than us just sticking that
Maybe
in.
amends that I seconded, or it's a, this week's minutes.
Well, it was one motion, right? So,
Well, there are 2 motions, one, then they want to use a second.
no, I mean,
Oh, to
I
enter
just-
the meeting.
I just made a motion to approve these as presented. So then I don't know if maybe I have to make a friendly amendment to my own motion, or do we need another?
I think anybody can amend it. If you would, based upon the feedback, like to amend your motion,
Okay,
that would work well.
Right.
Say some type of-
yes. So I'll make a motion to amend my motion. I would like to make an amendment to my motion to include Dave's language, which he will write to you, send to you, right?
That, that be included that, in the appointment of Robin Mosher, she took the seat, that had been previously held by John Dumas, and the seat expires in 2004.
And that John Magliocco
Took the seat previously held by Jim Riley, and that term expires in 2025.
Thank you. So then I think somebody has to second this.
Jim just did. Any other changes? All in favor of accepting both July 18th minutes as proposed, say aye. The warrants are for the accounts payable up through today. Again, can I have a motion to approve those and then we can discuss them? Thank you, Mandy.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Claude. Any discussion? Yeah, we talked about the Jennyville, you talked about the Jennyville road culverts in your manager's notes, and we've also talked about it before. So this $17,000 is for the physical culvert. Yeah. Sort of pre-buying.
10 culverts, and we can get into this in the town manager update, but if we scale that project back a little bit, we'll just use, at this point, having culverts on hand is not a bad thing. So we'll just use them at some point.
And then we had discussions about signage for some of the public areas like Katie Brook. And there's an item in here for street signs for $3,400. And were those actual road signs?
They were, yeah. So last year in particular, this year we haven't quite had the same rash of sign stealing, but we had, I don't know, it was 23 or 33 signs that we replaced between last summer and this summer.
We knew where it was going.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one I'm surprised we put back up, but.
it was up for about a day.
It was, it was exactly. It used to be like the top of the tree, but anyway. Weed is gone, but we replaced a large number of road signs between last year and this year.
Is there, I know the answer to this, but it's mandatory, right, to have that sign up?
It's 911 purposes.
I know.
Mail, UPS. Are you thinking about weed? The little paper one that your neighbor puts up has been working really well.
Not anymore, it fell down, and on my way here, I saw a small wooden one that's very attractive, so that's gonna be gone very shortly.
The amount of money that we had spent on weed road signs
I
is
know.
just astronomical.
So is there, could we paint Weed Road on the road?
We could maybe use a drone.
No, I'm serious,
Yeah,
like
I know.
that would,
Yeah.
they'd have to jackhammer it up, you know? They'd have to really want that.
I think we should invest in game cameras.
We have tried grease, we have tried, we greased the pole, we greased the sign, we put it at the top of the tree, we put it, you couldn't even, it wasn't even like useful when it was high in the
I know,
sky.
it wasn't,
I was here for like a
right.
year and a half before Bill told me, yeah, it's way up in the tree there.
It just seems, why don't we sell these things to fans? Like here,
That wouldn't be as much fun, I think.
I know, but it would save labor. All right, I know I'm being facetious, but honestly, it just seems like such a waste of money.
Maybe we should change the word.
No, we can't, because the family is buried in that cemetery. I mean, it's a legitimate name, the Lee family, the Flower family, so. Okay, so.
I don't have an immediate
I know,
answer.
I know,
We've
okay.
tried
I'm
quite
just
a bit
frustrated.
of different things. We're all a bit frustrated.
Yeah.
Cemetery signs.
Oh, that cemetery sign was there, I don't know, maybe a week.
Okay, we have a motion.
I just asked a question about signs. So I have a request from a resident for an additional sign. I will just send it to you. So the request is at County Road, there's a hospital sign coming from Four Corners, so there's not one coming from Brownsville. The request is that one branch.
Where is the one presently? It should be on one of the two corners, correct?
The one now, if you're approaching from Four Corners, you'll see a hospital sign. So, yeah, take a look. There's not a make to it on the opposite side. So if you're coming from Brownsville, you know that that's.
If you're coming from Best Road.
Yeah.
You want to take a right on the county,
Yeah.
there's nothing telling you that there's county road.
Yeah, there's no hospital sign.
We generally don't do the hospital signs, but, I can inquire about it. We do road signs and stop signs and stuff like that. I can ask about the hospital sign. I don't think that's us.
Let me know if you'd like somebody else I can do it there.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any adjustments to the agenda? I would like to make one. Shane and Corey Barrows are here. We have their letter to us in correspondence, and rather than wait until the end of the meeting, I was wondering if there were public comments you would allow them to speak. Yeah, great, thank you. Any other adjustments?
You want to do all correspondence early?
Sure. Okay, yeah. It's just that one additional one and actually a thank you note.
What?
Believe me,
Must be delivered to the wrong address.
I wrote it myself. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, we're on to public comments. Sir, your hand is, the gentleman to your left is sort of pointing at you, so.
You want public comments, right?
Yes. You want to just stay back here?
Have a seat.
I don't know if you guys do this stuff or not, but my neighbor took 10 acres of my land, and I wondered how he got it changed over into his name. I never got any notice of it, but
Okay, sir, can you identify yourself, please?
Melvin Dow.
Mr. Dowling, okay, thank you. Okay.
So I was wondering how he got it changed over into his name, and when I go to get a lawyer, they always say, well, who's paying the taxes on it? And somehow he got changes into his name, and he's paying taxes on it, so.
Is this something you've talked to our listers about?
Yeah, we've had considerable conversation back a bit, and I think we even talked to the listers a little bit, but best that I can tell, it's primarily a property issue between two property owners. There's not really a role for the town in this, as far as, you know, at some point, the subdivision or, you know, there's, the owner that he is speaking about claims X amount of property, and what's your last name again? Last name?
Down,
Darling?
down.
Mr. Darling says that, no, property line's over here, and the dispute goes back a bit at this point. I'm glad if you've heard this before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it is a situation between two property owners. It's, I assume it was corrected in the lister's cards with survey on file. That's the only thing I can imagine, unless there's written deed that describes the property as such.
So can I just ask a question? Is it reasonable to ask the town clerk just to get the land records, you know, just pull the land records and make copies so that the relative parties have access to
I believe we've been down that road,
them? Okay.
and then some.
So it sounds like there needs to be a legal discussion between lawyers over the property pieces.
Yeah, but when I go see a lawyer, they say, well, who's paying taxes on it? And I have to say, well, Mr. Wood is paying taxes on it because he got it worked over into his name somehow.
Mhm.
He bought 40 acres, but like this right here shows he surveyed out 51 and a half.
1.5 acres.
The 50,
51.
51.
Oh, okay.
And I called this surveyor when he was up there surveying it. And he says, his surveyor says, I'm not working for you. I don't have to listen to you. I'm not going to talk to you. Goodbye. And I don't think as I can see, I tried to get, my lawyer said if you can get a line drawn down across on your 10 acres by a surveyor, he says, then you get a case and I'll take it. And that was, I think his name is Melvin Fink.
Yeah, he's an attorney out of Ludlow.
Yeah. And so I've seen 3 surveyors. And they said, no, we can't survey it. And I don't see why they couldn't. There's, you know, the state, they got registered or something. So why couldn't they, if his surveyor can go right around it, I don't see why mine can't.
I feel a little helpless here with,
Was there a survey done when you sold the property?
When I bought it, I just bought it with a deed. I have the deed right here. And it tells, you know, where it began and where it ended and stuff, but they claim that it wasn't made out right or something. So I don't see how he could claim it if I can.
I'm at a loss here. It's just like a legal situation.
Stop back and see me. I've spent considerable time, I know there's been a fairly lengthy discussion with Stacy at one point, that also included me. Sounds like Clyde's been involved in this.
Well, other than recording survey maps.
I guess this is beyond our job. Like, we don't have any expertise in what you need. I think we've been talking to a lawyer, and it sounds like it's a legal issue. We have no experience or education to deal with this type of issue that you have, and I'm sorry that this is bedeviling you, and I wish we could help you, but this is not the type of thing we deal with.
Or how did he get it changed over into his name then?
I mean, I have no idea.
That's when they did resurveys, when they redid the tax maps. I don't know.
I don't think it was correct to begin with.
Okay.
The interpretation originally, I think, was not quite right.
Because he's only been paying taxes on it for, 3, 4 years. They didn't tell me when they were taking it off mine or anything.
Yeah, it sounds like a lister something that the listers need to deal with, and maybe surveyors and lawyers, and the town clerk, but that's all somewhere else.
So I kind of asked this already, but have we provided every document that the town can provide to help him get to his lawyer with the right information? You know, in terms of tax.
I believe he
tax
has everything in his possession that he needs.
So like past tax bills that he paid and that this person paid, any B filings or.
There's been some time spent on this,
Okay.
all the way around.
And I bought this property way back, I think it was in '67. And we paid taxes on it for years.
He'd come in and we can go through his paperwork again, but it's, it's a boundary. He says, she says type thing.
Yeah, but as long as he's got everything he needs to go to a lawyer, I think that's at least helpful.
Unfortunately, it feels like that's the next step. And I'm sorry to hear your lawyer is kind of pushing you around saying you don't have I'm not sure what you said, but I think as Mary said, we are, can only encourage you to sort of get some legal help with this. And if there's any additional information, please come to the town manager or to the listener, and we'll do our best to pull it out for you.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe you could tell me how we got control of it in the first place here, because I've been paying taxes on it for, way back since, '67, I think I bought it.
Yeah, it sounds like there's clearly some mistakes or misunderstandings, but it feels a little bit like he said, she said, they said, so I think you really need to have it resolved through legal counsels.
Yeah, but,
Wish we could help you more.
yeah, like Fink said over there, if you can get a line drawn across where your property is there, take the case, but they can't take it, not having a line across there.
I think there was a survey provided on the sale. I think that's, my memory's coming back a little
I
bit.
mean, I know that a while back, they redid all of the town maps. Remember, that was probably 14
Yeah,
or
they
so
did
years
it
ago.
from surveys.
Yeah, and that was all done based on surveys that we had.
Yeah. But
So I don't know if there was original, in the original sale. Was there surveys or-
it wasn't, it was more of the sale that
Yeah.
has prompted this. Who owns what?
Yeah, so there was no original survey.
And he wanted to buy this little piece of property. Well, he's trying to take it, the same way he just took this 10 acres, just get away and go for it, but that didn't work out for him. And you think they'd consider that for the, and have that 10 acres.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in. I wish we could have offered you more help, but at this point we can't.
If you don't have any suggestions, who might be a good lawyer for it, or?
I can make a personal recommendation, but somebody that I worked with. So I'll write that down for you and give it to you.
Is he fairly close?
I think he's in Montpelier. But all my work I did over the phone with him.
What I do? Yeah, well, The way I had for this, to try to do it over the phone, too, it didn't come out very well.
What do we have besides batteries?
Just the signals.
Okay, again, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry. Shane and Corey, do you want to come forward? Just grab another chair, please. I don't know how appropriate this is.
He said personal, and he's not mentioning it in the name.
Shane, just give us one moment here. How are we doing with names?
Oh, 100%.
Okay, excellent.
That's what she's got a computer. She is logged in.
You know more than we do.
Norwich.
No,
Okay, let's go on then. Shane and Corey, please.
My name is Shane Barrows, this is my wife Corey Barrows.
Yeah.
We are currently in a sale contract for 84 Clay Hill Road, which is 54 acres. Yeah, I just want to introduce ourselves to the town. I grew up in this town, lived here until I was 20. Corey grew up in Woodstock. We currently reside in Pomfret. And we want to build our forever home in Hartland. We'd like to turn that 55 acres into 3 house lots and 1 commercial lot. I don't have any proposals at this time. We're just trying to get, just introduce ourselves and let the town kind of have an idea of what we're trying to accomplish there. We have a window and door replacement company currently in Lebanon. It was in Woodstock, we moved it to Lebanon. It's very difficult to find commercial property, whether it's buildings or actual land anywhere in this area. But we started this company at our kitchen table, and it's grown now to somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 employees, not all of which are on site. So
Less than 5 years.
So it's gone well, obviously. But we're getting to a point where we think it's somewhat getting to the top of its curve, which is good, so we can try to settle down a little bit. But we know that this property is in Act 250. We've already been advised that. We know we have to, and we've done some legwork on that stuff too, to talk to some of the people that are involved, Peter Costco and some of those guys that are involved in that. But I just want to introduce you guys to us and the town, and like I say, several of the employees that we have live here in this town, and like I said, my parents live here, and they still reside here, as do aunts and uncles, and what have you. So, but we sent a letter, and I just wanted to show you a face to whoever that letter.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's good to meet
Thank you for having us. Any questions?
I know there's an access road today, I guess, that you were using for the login. This may be jumping the gun, but would there be one access to the various sites, or do you envision more access coming on the Claywood Road?
So there's actually three accesses, three right-of-ways to the property.
Okay.
One at the top, we'll say the very top, which is the one we plan to use. There's also one about halfway down the hill. There's another house right there. I'm trying to remember the owners. I can't remember them. But that's a right-of-way, a 50-foot right-of-way there. And then there's also one that was granted by the town to the current owner where the logging took place down at the bottom here. So there is three. We plan to use the one that's existing at the top for the residential side, and then that commercial space down below, we consider commercial space down below. And the reason why I say that it's commercial, it's between, I call it a rock and a hard place, but you got a steep bank on the back side of it, and then you have Clay Hill and 91 on the front side. So it's not an ideal spot for residential. A residential location, but and it's tucked back in there pretty good. It's fairly well hidden from the main stream, and you know we would certainly be willing to work with the town aesthetically on the building and stuff like that, as long as we're fiscally responsible. So,
And it's not like we have 40 people there all day long.
no.
There's probably 8 to 10, maybe max.
Yeah,
a day.
we're an in-home consultation company. So our salesmen are not in the house at all. They're all over our area. And then our teams literally come to the office in the morning, load a truck and leave, and they're gone home for the day. And they show up, so that's about it.
Good, okay. Any other questions? Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that.
Yes, it's Clear Hill, paved over there. This is a paved hill section. Hopefully we'll be freshly paved section.
On the other end of it.
Next summer,
Next, oh, right. okay.
Quincy roadside
Yeah,
is done.
I'm getting my ends mixed up. I tried riding a bike recently on both ends and I'd be happy to have.
For the record, the middle part is dirt, but the two ends are paved.
Okay. Okay, we have some correspondence here from Mr. Ramos.
That's me, by the way. for Facebook.
Oh.
Please come forward and I'd love to hear your thinking.
My name is Arturo Ramos. I'm the owner of a property at 529 Peachy Road. I've owned that property actually for a few years. We just started living on it with COVID, being able to work remote. So we've had the pleasure of being now nearly full time in Hartland for a couple of years. And I just wanted to introduce myself to all of you, and I've been keeping track sort of online of the various deliberations about the new town plan, and the issue of short-term rental limitations came up, and I just wanted to express my opinion that I believe that short-term rentals are actually a very positive thing for this community, in the sense that I think a community as rural as Hartland, in order for it to preserve the rural beauty and all the recreational facilities that we have, as well as I think some of the amenities that are made possible by the people who come on vacation here. I think the volume necessary to maintain a lot of our retail establishments would not be here were it not for visitors. And I just believe that housing these visitors in homes allows us to actually integrate them into the community in a way that would not be possible if they were to be staying at a commercial establishment. I know that the renters that I have in our house, when we're not using it, I make a point of pointing them to local farms and the farmers market and local businesses and recreation that they might not be aware of. And I think it would be very detrimental to sort of cut off a lot of those visitors to our town that help, I think, improve it in many ways.
there any questions at all?
No.
Thank you for your correspondence and thank you for coming in.
Thank you. It is helpful to meet people, you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other, oh, I'm sorry, that was correspondence. Are there any public comments? Additional public comments?
We're running out of people. Maybe on.
We're all looking virtually. Okay. Hearing none, let's go on to old business and the town plan update. We've received in our packets a new town plan and also a document that demonstrates the differences in the plan from the March 11th draft. So I would like to ask Sean if you could come up and just step us through a little bit of background about what's been keeping you busy for the past 2 weeks that resulted where we are today.
Yes, so what you guys have is a comparison between the March 11th draft of the town plan, which is the planning commission draft, and the current draft. And that's basically has all the changes that have occurred to the town plan since the planning commission passed it over to the select board. Dave and I have been working on it. And then there's certain things in there that have been removed that aren't mentioned because they're not in the final draft, the newest draft of the town plan, if that makes any sense. So I can go through that really quick.
No, it doesn't make sense.
Oh, okay.
Could you repeat that, Sean?
So there's certain things that were removed from the town plan from the request.
Based on our last motion.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
for example, rural enterprise language, that was removed because that was added in to address Sunnymead's comments. Language referring to lodging, that was also removed. Under home occupation, there's a lodging section that was removed. And then also language referring to farm-based businesses, and that's all in chapter 1 was removed. Chapter 9, yet again, rural enterprise language was removed. Home business definition, lodging type language was removed. Language around short-term rentals was also removed, where it says short-term rentals not to exceed 2 bedrooms. That language was removed to go back to the 2017 version of that. And that was removed in home occupation, also small enterprises definitions. And then chapter 12, under definitions, there was also language removed. Basically associated definitions with those changes were removed. So if you're curious what pages it is, so chapter 1, the language that was removed, it's 22 and 23 in the new draft of town plan, but that language is no longer there. And then there's also a few other changes, or a few, I guess, larger changes that have occurred to the plan since the last time we spoke, which was Clyde and Jennifer Wade's comments were addressed, and that was things like updated current use statistics, adding Katy Brook under the trail section. So smaller, not big changes. And then,
So corrections, not policy change.
yeah, not policy changes. And then also in chapter 1 on pages 8 to 10, the growth rate data was updated, and then some of the associated language with that. Like some of the data was taken from a paragraph, I put it in tables, that sort of thing. Chapter 4, pages 52 to 54, the housing data was updated, and then also the associated language with that. And then chapter 7, school data was updated, which is sort of this where secondary students from Hartland go, so I updated that information, the number of students at the schools, and the kind of associated language with that. And that's page 85 to 86. And then the last, I guess, bigger update was chapter 7 on page 88. I updated the town and road equipment.
Page 88 or 98?
88. Like like dump trucks and all that stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I read through this, 2017 plan, the March plan, and this plan over the weekend, and I just want to thank Dave and Sean for all the work they did. There's a lot of work to get the census data up to date, school data, all the corrections that had to happen. In terms of our motion from last week, they did, exactly what we asked them to do, so I think that's great. So as I read through this, what my eyes pick up is like, we're really close to the finish line, but there's maybe a half a dozen policy changes that are still in here. So if we pass this plan, we're taking responsibility for those policy changes. So I think it would be good at least to run through them real quick in Sean's document and say, all right, here's the policy change.
Sure.
Doesn't make, what's the reason for it? Doesn't make sense. Good, check it off.
And Jim, I think you're highlighting something that I wanted to ask about as well. So we have Kevin Geiger of Two Rivers, who did the administrative changes, and how many of those changes actually drifted into some of those policy areas that we had in his attempt to clarify things? I know that's a broad question, but I'm wondering if that's not.
Well, I think, probably some of those Kevin's
changes,
right, his suggestions.
There's certain changes in here that do, I guess, would affect how the town grows. Like there's, I'm not exactly sure what section it is, but there's like a change that Kevin made that encourages like manufactured housing, mobile homes in like rural areas of town, which wasn't in there previously.
I thought it was village. He encouraged.
Village, that might have been, because he wants to, basically, that was one of the things, the comments Kevin has, that that's something they wanted the plan to address, so that's a change he added in. Also, there's changes about if you're building affordable housing, basically you could like increase density for affordable housing in certain areas. So they'd like, I think it's in the, I don't know exactly what page it's on, but if you mention it.
I did see that in there.
So no doubt some of this, I mean, just on the first page, there's a change that kind of changes the document in and of itself. So there are some changes in here that Kevin put in here. So I've been in here for a while, but if that's something you guys want to just,
I think we'll get batted around fairly quickly. If you want to give me a chance of doing like one example.
I have a question. Are we gonna vote on this tonight?
I hope so. We could, if we, what I would hope is that we move forward once we finish our discussion. And then the next step would be to take whatever is the output of this discussion and the work that Sean and Dave have done to a public hearing.
So I thought that we were gonna kind of go slowly on this and then have them do a survey.
No.
No.
No, I requested at the last meeting to hold off on the survey.
So we would be adopting a revised town plan without a survey.
With hopefully a revised town plan with minimal policy changes.
Right. Minimum policy changes in the volatile areas that the town.
Yeah, that's a big one. I gotta clarify that statement, because a lot of the language that the planning commission put forth that wasn't brought up in the select board public hearing, there's just the chapter on forest blocks is a huge change, okay? So there's policy changes in here throughout, put in by the planning commission.
I agree.
That wasn't really a hot button issue. So what we did was those issues that garnered the most feedback, such as the short-term rental and the lodging, reverted back to 2017 to kind of, as a compromise to move this forward. Much of the other language put forth by the planning commission stays intact, which actually does.
There's a lot of
There are
policy changes.
significant changes in there, but we're not, I don't think that the intent was to come back here today and to go through all those changes.
No,
I think that was a kind of the point was to, these issues where we couldn't get over.
Yeah.
And we reverted back to 2017. We pushed this forward, get it passed, and then if the planning commission would like to go back and do a survey and maybe take on something at that point, they can at a later time and take their time, get a budget, get a consultant and all that good stuff to do it. There's a lot of things in here, planning commission would probably say a lot of good things that should probably go forth. There was a lot of effort there, and they can come back at a later time on the issues that were put back to 2017.
But we haven't discussed all these other things. We focused on, like you said, the hot button things.
So you're absolutely right. So, I mean, the forest blocks is a big chapter, right? And it's brand new. So when I read through this, what I was focused on is the policy changes between the delivery of the plan from the planning commission in March.
Yeah.
And we were at today, and I've got like a half a dozen that just, like a quick conversation and say, does this additional change that we've made at our level, right, does it make sense to keep it? Yes, no, advice from the planning commission, what they think if needed, and then we can kind of decide if we can move forward with this or not. So if I can just borrow a little bit more time, if I give you one example, right?
Yeah, I want to make sure you understand.
I still don't think
I thought you were, we all were on the same page here. So at the last select board meeting, we decided to reduce the conflict that was arising between what we heard from citizens trying to add flexibility and meet those needs, and what the planning commission had done. So we decided in those areas, those specific areas of hospitality,
short-term rentals,
short-term
lodging, and
rentals,
rural enterprise.
and then that Sunnymead thing really isn't really addressed here, that we would go back to where the planning commission started before they gave it to us. So the last official town plan.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Yeah.
You're correct. I mean, there are, 10 or 11 chapters, and, these are specific paragraphs in chapter 1 and chapter 9. I've gone through the energy, there's some additional energy language here, in what Sean has presented. And I don't think the forest block, we had some discussions of forest block way back when the planning commission had a public hearing. Right. On that part. So what I was hoping today that we would have the discussion ourselves. We could hopefully gain a comfort level that to sort of say, yes, let's bring this to the public hearing and move forward.
Without discussing those other chapters.
I've read those other chapters, and I don't remember anyone. We'd be happy to have that discussion, but I don't remember any issues being brought to us about those chapters. The Energy Committee worked with Two Rivers. The Planning Commission took their work and worked really hard to sort of make it John help me, more logical, more presentable, and more precise?
I think that's sort of an eight-page document in and of itself, and to incorporate that into the town plan would be sort of unreasonable, so I think we tried to condense it into representing the policy of the commission and incorporate it into the town plan.
So I mentioned that because it's really been bantered about quite a bit by the Energy Committee and then the Planning Commission before it got here, in that part, as well as Two Rivers. Okay. Can I ask just for some help with definitions to make sure that we're all on the same page? Structural density and structures
Yes.
is kicked around an awful lot, and then the idea of dwelling unit density, and that comes up with accessory ADUs and all of which ways. So I know we have the appendix, but just could you take a moment to refresh us, and then we'll go into some of those comments.
Yeah, so are you talking about in the rural residential area where?
Yes.
Yeah, so in the rural residential area, there's a structural density of 1 structure per 5 acres, and a dwelling unit density of 2 dwelling units per 5 acres. So let's say you have 5 acres, you can have 1 structure with 2 dwelling units. You have 10 acres, you can have 2 structures with 2 dwelling units each. And then what was added in by Kevin and us was a kind of cap on the number of dwelling units you can have in 1 structure, so you cannot have more than 4 dwelling units in 1 structure. So if you have 20 acres, you can have up to 8 dwelling units. And you can either have those in, let's say, 2 structures with 4 dwelling units each, 4 structures with 2 dwelling units each, but you couldn't have 1 singular structure with 8 dwelling units.
Okay, I have a real problem with that. That does not make any sense to me whatsoever. So I drew myself a little map, right?
Okay.
So you've got your 20 acres, 5, 5, 5, 5. And it says 1 structure per 5 acres with 2 dwelling units. So I don't see how there can be any deviation from this with that language that then says you can have 4 structures with 2 dwelling units each. Or no, you can't have, well, how can you have 2 structures with 4 dwelling units each? How can that happen? If
Because-
only 1 structure can be
I think,
5 acres.
so like it's on per parcel, I believe, so if it's a 20-acre parcel, you could concentrate in 1 section of the parcel your, let's say, 8 dwelling units. You
So you
don't
can
have to
cluster.
necessarily be like split between 5 acres each,
And that's not clear to me, at least in this,
the way it's.
how it's written. You know what I mean? Does it make sense to you?
It was even worse prior.
Okay, well, okay.
We played with it.
Still needs a little,
So the concept here is to keep it, residential-like. So instead of having a building with, 4, levels and 10 units, they keep it, even though you can have multiple units, they end up being relatively small in nature, kind of residential, rural residential in nature. The village, you can have a larger structure, but as you get towards the rural area, I think is one structure per 10 acres. So it gets even less dense. Rural residential is kind of in between. I was actually, Sean and I were talking a little bit. So for instance, like Woodstock has some new affordable housing
Yeah.
over by kind of the market there.
Yeah.
It's not like 2 big buildings, it's kind of smaller units, but there's like maybe, 10 of them back there. So it's you get a smaller feel, it doesn't dwarf the neighborhood. I believe that is the concept, because we read some of the other language in there, it talks about needing to fit into the residential character of the neighborhood, et cetera. So I believe that is why the additional language of no more than 4 units per structure was added in.
I understand the concept. I don't think it's communicated
Okay.
clearly. That's all. I don't have a problem with the idea.
So it's a great example of a policy change that we need to think about before we take ownership of it.
Mhm.
So I made a good point, but I would say at this point, it wouldn't be a bad idea to hear the planning commission's view on that change. Did the change materially undo something that they were trying to do?
Like reasonable steps, the next thing, what is a reasonable step? Are they listed somewhere?
Some of the definitions of it can be there.
Right, in the next, it's on page 5, says subdivision subject to Act 250 on lots over 5 acres shall take reasonable steps to cluster development. I mean, if I were a developer, I wouldn't know what those, I don't think I would know, maybe I would, maybe they know what reasonable steps are. I don't know what they are. Is that standard
But,
language?
so, my recommendation to the board would be to kind of stick with some of the larger issues, that particular sentence, I'm not sure if that was added in by Kevin, but we can sit here and really dicker around with every sentence in this.
These are the changes.
In this.
These are the
Okay.
changes.
So I would just say that, I think I would stick with the more policy oriented, things so that we can kind of have a reasonably timed discussion. The only thing I would make towards Jim's comment is, I'm not sure you want to bat every one of these back to the planning commission either. I think that you're capable, some of this is fairly simple.
I think there's maybe a half a dozen things in this here that are worth discussion.
I think that.
Well, I think we're going there anyway, in the sense that we are going to have a public hearing and the planning commission will be right there, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, which I think is fine. The one caution I throw away.
Just moving on, because I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, my recommendation, we've been here, we're down to, some revisions that I believe Kevin put in there to kind of align it with the regional plan and some other issues.
I think that's what we want to understand. This particular policy change, Two Rivers recommends it for the following reason, right? That's good information for us to have.
Just, I'm not part of the board, but this particular language, I think would align more with the planning commission than not, compared to some of the other language.
Yeah, and that may be true. So the other question I want to throw in is that, and again, we can debate the semantics, so maybe get more consultation from JLCT. But for making policy changes, in theory, it's a significant change, right? In theory, it puts us, a public hearing and then a final public hearing.
I really thought we were backing policy out.
But, I mean, again, some of these changes might be benign, right? Some of them might be material. I don't know how to measure them.
So who do I ask these questions to? I have questions on these changes, and I'm not getting the answers tonight. Who do I get?
Just a
Who do I get?
second. Let me just.
Hold on one moment. Randy, you said?
Yeah, I just was trying to figure out.
I would just add, I think Peter Gregory summed it up very well. If the planning commission, 15 days prior, whatever the timing is, they're notified of whatever that comes out of the select board, they can write.
Well, they can testify.
They can write,
they can write
whatever they actually can, they write a document, okay? And the select board can take it or not. As long as you're within as long as you're in the guidelines of the state, which Two Rivers will make sure that we do. Planning commission is free to write, shall write, if they so choose, a memo based upon what they perceive are changes.
So does anybody object to just, we don't have to fight for a decision on each one of these, but just run through a few and see what we learn?
Yeah, can you give one or two examples?
I'm going to start at the beginning.
And then also Mary's got something on the table here.
Oh, yeah,
that we haven't
please go.
addressed. So.
Been kicked like 3 or 4 times.
Oh, boy, if I could get you, I would.
I'm bruised.
You want a pair of work boots? I got work boots in there.
Those high heel shoes.
Yeah, right, high heels.
So let me throw an example, all right? So this starts at the bottom of Sean's summary, bottom of page 3 and runs to page 4. It's village area policy number 9, right? One sentence was struck out, and the sentence was, not occur on prime agricultural soils or other critical resources. So the question, I think, becomes, why would we strike out that sentence that is preventing development on prime agricultural soils? What's the reason behind that?
What page you on?
So in Sean's document, the bottom of page 3, that line is stricken out.
I don't see it either, so I was just trying to,
It's.
okay.
So it's the first stricken line on page 4.
On page 4.
He started.
It's the old language.
Yeah, but why was it stricken is what he's saying, and that's a good question.
Yeah. So the new language doesn't contain that statement.
We can ask Sean.
So that was a change done by Kevin Greiger, by the agricultural soils part was taken out. So he changed it to within 50 feet of streams and floodplains. I'm honestly not sure why that was.
Yeah.
So it's a policy change. It opens up farmland for commercial development.
I was wondering that myself.
But this is village, it's in the villages. I don't know, other than, I don't know of any prime agricultural land in.
Yeah, if you look at the microscopic land use map in this document, take a magnifying glass out, you'll see that the land, the village boundary runs all the way from here down to Four Corners, so all of these fields will be included in that.
Okay, well, I have been asked to do that research, and I thought the village ended at.
The official land use map shows all this land between 3 corners and 4 corners as part of the village.
So, but you're under the town plan concept, all the development is supposed to occur in the village.
Right.
So
I think they're saying that, except on prime agricultural.
but, at some point you run out of, you don't have a whole lot of space in the village as it is.
100%.
So if you're gonna not, so I think that the concept here is that you've driven all, from what I understand from the planning commission and the document is if you want everything, you want minimal amount in the rural area and not a whole lot in the rural residential, but you would like it to occur in the village. So if you're gonna say, okay, we want it to occur in the village, but, not on, certain places, it's a little counterintuitive, so you're saying we want it there, but.
It's a policy decision. Do we want to, I think the planning commission's policy was, we want commercial development in the village, but not on good farmland. And now the policy's changed to say anywhere in the village designation. So
Well,
policy
not
change.
anywhere, there's not occur within 50 feet of stream banks.
Right, yeah, that's true.
So it is restricted.
So that's where I would see it's reasonable to ask the planning commission, what was their intent? And is this a reasonable change?
Well, I have to say I'm in agreement with Dave, and the planning commission can come back with that. I mean, again, this is not a change that we made ourselves, but it's coming from Two Rivers.
But I'm wondering.
What is that regional plan, sort of, why is he looking at the regional plan, sort of?
That's the question. I'm wondering if it was a misconception about where the village boundaries were. And that it wasn't understood, because even we didn't all understand that it included all this land over here.
Yeah.
Right. But we have a planning commission member here.
Yeah, excuse me? Yeah, I can recognize you.
Okay.
Yes, John?
Just kind of a further, a couple of the criteria, or the criteria basically outline of what's being crossed out, prime agricultural land and critical resource areas are evaluated under Act 250. And so, you know, the totally, I think I have to agree that, well, personally, I'm not speaking for the commission right now, but to restrict it from, takes out the issue of evaluating a need versus an impact. So in other words, if somebody comes up and says, I want to put affordable housing on one of these sections of prime agricultural soils, they'll have to deal with Act 250 for whatever mitigation they have to do for that, if in fact they get a permit to do it. But to completely say you can't do it, not even thinking about doing it, personally, I think that's a big change in policy and becomes more restrictive. And I guess the other question is do we have to sort of bow down to regional planning commission dictates?
That's a personal comment. I feel differently. So
That's fine.
And that's a very strong bow down.
So anyway, that's the example, right? There's a half a dozen of these things that my eyes picked up that just seemed like they were material policy changes, and it wasn't clear to me if we really wanted to adopt them as a select board without understanding.
Say that last thing again, it's not clear.
It wasn't clear to me if we want to adopt these policy changes as a select board without fully understanding them.
I'm going to need to hear from the rest of my board here, our board. I mean, I plowed through this as you did, Jim, and spent a lot of time on it. I had some questions, actually, Mary, where you were zeroing in. But I don't want to kick this down the road to 10 more meetings.
Right, I agree.
And then I really feel we were on track to sort of resolve the issues that were contentious and move forward. So, yeah, that's my feeling. Sean, did we cut you off before? I don't know where we were with going through.
No, as basically moving forward, however you guys want to move forward.
Yeah, okay.
I cut Mary off.
The
Really hurts.
the purpose of this item being on the agenda is so that we can talk about it. And I think maybe all of us have credible questions that we need to answer. And it's probably not going to be resolved, these questions, in an hour. It might take 5 more meetings of an hour each on the agenda. And
We're just watching Phil's blood pressure go up.
I know, but there is no hurry. This is what I don't understand is, what is the hurry?
Well, I don't think there's a hurry, but there is a reality that if we have to do 2 more meetings, that's 60 days reasonable, right, to get 2 more meetings, public meetings. So we're August, that's September, October, so we're pushing November.
What do you mean, 60 more days?
By the time you warn a meeting, have the meeting, do follow from the meeting, it's a lengthy.
You mean a hearing, a public?
A hearing.
Oh, I see.
15-day notice.
So I'm not saying we need hearings for these. I know we have to have one more hearing, but I'm just saying, all right, if we want to limit the amount of discussion on this particular topic per meeting, all right, I'm fine with that, but why limit the number of meetings that this is on the agenda? What's the time crunch?
Because at some point, you got class 4 and legal trailers, you got budget, you got other
Right,
things. At
right.
some point, you gotta,
We do have other things, and we spent a lot of time on those hot button issues, and like almost nothing on the rest of the plan. And I do have what I consider to be legitimate questions that I would like answered.
That's why I said I cut you off.
Yeah, because,
Okay, so you've got a flavor, let's go to Mary, and then Mandy and Clyde.
We probably all have similar questions, so.
thank you. I have a number of grammatical things, which I will talk to Sean about. The whole dwelling thing, that you have the same thing, I talked about the reasonable steps, that to me is too vague. On page 6, Sean, I was wondering if you could put, it says the updated inventory can be found in the Vermont Culvert database. Could you put a link in that?
I didn't, but I can.
Yeah, could you, yeah.
That's in the roads report.
And then on page 7, there's, I don't know if this is a typo, but it says most of the housing in town is, no, it's not a typo, because it's the same as the old language. And it's with only 5.7 categorized by 2000 census. So how about 2020 data? See, it's like the 4th paragraph down. Under housing supply and ownership, paragraph 2, new language.
What section? Sorry.
So,
On page
7.
7.
Yeah. About 2/3 of the way down, housing supply and ownership, paragraph 2, new language.
Oh, seasonal?
It says, yeah, 2000 census.
So when I was looking for updated data on that, I couldn't find anything updated as far as seasonal. I couldn't find anything for 2020 or 2010 as far as like seasonal residents.
I have had to use it at work, so I can find that for you.
Okay.
Okay. Because I know that is available.
Is that by region of like town? Or?
It's by town. Yeah, it's very helpful. And then there's a graph on here that was omitted, but I think it's very interesting. It's page 2.
Is it the population?
Is it, no, oh, this is, yeah. Yes, it is the population one. You have it, the original one was starting back in maybe 1790, and then the new one starts at 1970.
Yeah, I can do that. When I was making that one, I was just looking at the data in the tables for making the new graph, but I can make the new graph with the old, like, I know what you mean. Like,
Yeah, because, well, it starts at 1970 in the new graph, and in the old graph, it starts at 1790. See what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot more historical data in that original one, and I just think that's much more interesting and useful. Okay, page 3. 252 of the total houses in Hartland were vacant in 2020. What does that mean? What's vacant mean?
Vacant. That was census data. I'm not exactly sure how the census defines vacant, but
Yeah.
I could look up a definition and add that.
Would it be second home?
Well, they were using the seasonal
Yeah.
as a term, so vacant seemed to me to be something entirely different, but maybe it's not.
I believe, I'm not sure what it means, honestly.
Where are you reading?
So page 3,
Growth rate paragraph.
growth, yeah,
It's the growth rate, second paragraph, new language. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. Because if 252 of the total houses in Heartland were actually vacant, that would mean there'd be a lot of new residents who, could buy in here, but maybe it
I
means.
assume that would mean not occupied full time, like a home that's not occupied. Maybe when the census was taken, there wasn't like they have a home in Boston and then a home.
Okay, so that would be
So I would have-
more second home or seasonal, like Clyde said. Like vacant has an entirely different meaning.
That's just as the language the census uses.
So we don't have to use it.
So if we don't, we just take out that sentence, or we clarify
just
what
say
vacant
season,
is.
yeah.
So we have to know what vacant means.
Exactly.
In order for us to change it,
Yeah,
or it just comes out, 252 total houses in Hartland are vacant.
I think that's an interesting piece of information, it's just,
If we can't describe what it
Yeah.
is, then we'll need to, he should be able to figure it out, but if not, that would be an issue.
okay. So page 4, buildings shall not exceed 3 stories or 50 feet in height. I thought each story was 10 feet. I thought a story is defined as 10 feet.
Yeah, plus foundation, plus roof.
So
So, a living space,
is,
with floor joists and ceiling joists could be 10 feet.
It's an or, so it's 3 stories or 50, so you could have a cupola or something over the top, whatever you've got for a building, the height
oh,
can't
okay,
be,
okay.
maximum is 50 feet regardless.
Okay. Or, okay, got it, thank you. Okay.
I think Dan German has a question.
Class 1 before public use. We just take that out.
You guys got a question? No?
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Oh, you ready for me?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, what is state tech as a high school? I've never heard of it. It's on the draft where kids go to high school.
So I pulled that information from the town report. I'm not 100% sure. State Tech might be the Springfield Tech School.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that's what it might be.
okay.
Hartland Selectboard.
Oh, they've got Hartland Tech listed up there.
No.
And page 15, the thing is very confusing about the dams. It says, 2 are located in the village of North Hartland, including the North Hartland Flood Control Dam operated by Essex Hydro and the Abequatchie Woolen Mill Dam operated by Green Mountain Power. Then there should be a period. Anyway, we'll work on that one, because doesn't make any sense. And who's going to routinely visit home businesses to see if they've grown? Is that you?
Good question. That language is in there, and there is not anyone, I guess, designated to do that, so.
I think that language also is a carryover.
Well, there's also, it says the new definition for home business, and then on page 17 for home occupations, it also says these businesses shall be reviewed periodically to determine if they have grown into commercial enterprises requiring additional approval. So I was just wondering, who's going to do that? Would that be you, Dave?
That was in the 2017.
That's just one that's in there, and we're not gonna figure it out.
Theoretically, that comes under the auspices of the town listers who appraise property.
Okay.
I think that if I were to hazard a guess, that, the planning commission has at times acted in Act 250 proceedings, and if something truly became more than what the permit was originally, then, someone may go to Act 250 and say, look, we need to, this is no longer, they reached their permit and there's something else at this point. It would need to be fairly substantial.
Thank you for your patience and attention. I will, yield my minutes to the next select board member.
Mandy Clyde, who just look at your opinion about write-up comparison and where we are.
I only have one thing that I kind of popped up to me is in the page 10, under the old language for the class 4 highways, I believe it was removed, the town should not discontinue class 4 highways or trails. I don't see that in the new language, but maybe I've missed it. And I know it says that they're an important public resource, but it doesn't say should not discontinue. And I guess.
So the class 4 language was submitted by the planning commission, and then I added it into this document, but I didn't write any of it.
Oh, it is here, we found it. I just didn't see it. It was moved from the end to up, so
the middle
we're
of the
good.
document, that makes sense.
Thank you.
So the thing with so many units on so many acres of land, right, we've got this big push for energy efficiency, and we want it so the toilet only uses a cup of water and all this crap. More dwellings in one building is more efficient than separate buildings, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but if you've got a lot of common walls, you've got a lot lower heating expense and all that. So you kind of, one side you want this, but the other side you don't want this. And there is another note, there isn't gonna be an awful lot of growth in the town of Hartland when 60% of the land in Hartland is unavailable for development, because it's in current use. And that's,
So, yeah, so quite on that second point, so we got a lot in current use,
Right.
which limits the ability to develop.
right, unless you pay a penalty to take it out.
Yeah, so you, so what, so I can infer certain things out of that comment.
Yeah.
What, could you clarify, so it's just not me trying to figure out what you're inferring?
Well,
Yeah.
if you have somebody who wants to buy, say, 2 acres to build a house on,
Yeah.
find it for me. Because most of the nice land to build on is now in current use, and you can't build on it. I mean, you can there's a side hill available on Best Road that you can't keep goats on that's available, but.
But how does that relate to what we're talking about in the town plan itself?
Well,
What's the
just
reality of?
you're saying that you've got these areas to develop, that you want to in the rural areas. There's no land in the rural areas to build on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like saying, well, we don't want you to do this, but we can't let you do it anyway because there's nothing there.
So anyone can take their land out of current use.
Yeah, pay a high penalty, but it's not necessarily going to happen.
Right.
So it's more.
I mean, it's all in a similar vein, right, of, why, in this particular policy was this line stricken, right? So before we, we can go there, we have time, but maybe we'll.
I'd love to answer, everyone trying to sort of work our way through ourselves, and then Dan, if you're there, I'll be happy to call you shortly.
All right, so I'll give you a couple of additional examples. On Sean's page 16, the heading is pages 97. That's the underlined heading. And there's, language for home occupation that's crossed out, and it wasn't clear to me if we were going back to 2017 language or we were really making a change there. And should we cross that language out?
So on the home occupation, which is this paragraph here on page 16.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 crossouts, one talking about owner of permanent resident, and then you've got the short-term rental.
Yeah, and short-term we agreed that we were.
So that language, as you see it, so if you cross it out and take it out,
Yeah.
that leaves 2017 language.
It does, so it reads the same as 2017.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a little further down, I think it's on the same page, double check. So on page 17 of Sean's document, the heading is, sorry, my mouse is current. The heading is pages 98. And the line that's stricken is unless they detract from the current character of the area.
So, Kevin left a comment on that.
Okay.
And he said that was something that couldn't really be like an enforceable thing. Because
You
it's
can't
very
define what the
subjective.
current character is.
So that's why he had it removed.
Yeah, I think I got one more here, a little further down the document, page 18, first paragraph. I guess this is a similar issue. We're striking out a line that was in the 2017 plan. But in this case, there was a replacement line in the new language, right? So I'm wondering if we should do that same type of replacement line in that previous paragraph.
Like pulling over that shall only have similar, that shall only have impact similar to other residential uses in the area, kind of pull that over to economic policy too.
Yeah, so that would make it consistent in both areas.
I think that would be a personal thing.
So we're talking about
Where was
economic policy 3,
Yeah, so policy 3 was altered, and you can see what was stricken, and you can see below the bolded language that it was replaced with. And my thought is that same process probably should have been used in my previous example. In the previous example, we just struck the language, but we didn't replace it.
John, are you able to make any comments on that?
I think that would make sense because the language that was struck out was removed because he said it wasn't really like enforceable, but then he added that language in because he said that's easier to work with. So I think it would make sense for consistency if we take the language from policy 3 and also add it into policy 2. The where it says they shall only have impact similar to other residential uses in the area. Pull that language and also put it in policy 2.
Let's tell you one last consistency issue, which I think is one of Kevin's issues. In some places, I believe you changed the language from rural district to rural area, for example. Village district to village area, and I think his argument was there are no districts, we're not the zoning town. And I think if you do a search for the word district in this document, you're going to find it in other places. So it might be worth looking at that to make sure that it's consistent without making an unintended change. Yeah.
And Dave, you had suggested you had a change.
So, yeah, kind of Jim, along your same thought process that there's some inconsistencies here. So on the same, so not on page 18, but on page 17, if you read, for instance, home business as defined or allowed in all future land uses, land use areas along Class 3 roads or better. Oh, wait a minute. So,
Yeah, so it looks like there's no language there from Kevin.
So it was my understanding that home business was actually allowed in the rural area in 2017.
Right, but I think that was one of the changes the planning commission made to deal with the inconsistencies that they wanted to with Act 250.
Yes, but I think that so if you look at 2017, let me just pull it up here.
Is it page 98?
I didn't look at it correctly.
Wait a second. Do you have 2017?
My note comes prepared.
So many versions.
Oh, the idea of it.
the answers to the concern about, should we drill into the energy chapter? The deeply, trying to straight to it. I was graduated pretty well between Two Rivers and the energy committee. Presented was extremely long, extensively. I think we should cut it down and restrain the I understand that original scope, I understand the idea of connected corridors. I didn't see any launch on that. I've never wanted to know when there's
Well, I guess maybe at the second public hearing, we're supposed to give feedback. Do we have to adopt it then? No. We could do just like we did, we got public feedback, and then we work through it.
Taking action.
Yeah.
Dave, you're searching?
I'm almost there.
Okay. I was just talking with Mary about both the energy chapter and the forest law chapter. And I really wanted to go back to John's comment on the energy. I sat in on the energy committee when I forget her name, but the Two Rivers representative really worked hard with them. They finished, and it was very verbose, everything under the sun possible. And the planning commission, I think, really kind of refined it to look toward how to achieve the goals of 2025 and the various other. So in my opinion, I don't think we need to go into the energy committee. That's why I was chatting with Mary about. And the forest block, I read through it. I understand conceptually about wildlife migration and some of the important things there. Nothing jumped out at me as I agree.
So the 2017 plan, home occupations, home businesses, and small enterprises as defined above are allowed in all districts except the river district. So, I think that the thought process was that home businesses and home occupations revert back to 2017. That was the motion. And
I would invite the planning commission to speak on that, because my understanding is
can I finish?
They deliberately did that to correct an inconsistency, like I called out for the Act 250.
Right, but the inconsistency was just because the land use chapter only had home occupations in not home businesses. So you had chapter 9 that clearly was telling people that home business and home occupation is allowed in all districts, yet the land use section did not have it. Oddly enough, Act 250 still permitted the Wise Pines Inn. So if you take this language that's in this document, it's even more stringent than the 8 to 10 rooms that, Todd Hamer was like, look, you've limited me to 8 to 10 rooms in the rural district. Well, it's even more stricter than that.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
And I think that,
but I would say that that's the thing that drove this town plan to be
One person
done.
at a time.
the controversy is that you were limiting, home businesses to that hospitality number to the rural areas was a decrease from the 2017. You've essentially taken small enterprise and home business out of the rural area completely, just leaving only home occupation, which is a stricter read of the town plan than what the public feedback was complaining about. So I guess my point here is that, you were talking about reverting back to 2017. I can't speak on the small enterprise, but I think that the concept here was that the home business and the home occupation would revert back to 2017. And I would say not only in the economic chapter, but it needs to be included my interpretation was that the discrepancy is that it wasn't included in the land use chapter. So not only would I go back to 2017, but I would include in the land use chapter, home occupation and home business,
So, which is not there.
which is not there now.
So the changes you're talking about is what drove the planning commission to submit us this town plan with that specific correction.
I understand that.
So I think on this one, you have to hear from the planning commission. So,
Okay, I'm gonna ask Dan Jermaine for his comments if he's still here.
so Dan, we're gonna unmute you shortly.
Excuse me.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Dan.
Are you ready?
For what?
We have our seatbelts
Oh my
on.
God.
Go ahead.
For me to speak, I don't know, I can't see anything about the electronics here, so. All right, so I had two comments. One was a general one, which was that and I think Sean expressed it pretty well, the changes that came from Two Rivers, the problem was that Two Rivers didn't make those suggestions to us. They, for whatever reason, or signals crossed, I don't know, but they didn't even enter the picture until that we had passed the plan on to the select board. So I think I can speak for the planning commission that we probably don't have too much issue with it, but I think we do want to address, and we do have to be concerned about, tightening up some language that we rarely disagree with Two Rivers about, policy changes, but I think we have not had the opportunity to have a back and forth and give and take with them about specific things. And so I think that to the extent that even Two Rivers was the source of some of the policy changes, I think that those should be held in abeyance. And again, to what Mary was saying, because there is no hurry on this. We can implement anything, but we just want to know what we're doing. The other thing, the more specific comment about the home businesses in the rural area, the portions that Dave was referring to were the planning commission, when we got the Wise Pines decision, the district did find that was, that they used that language. That language was a mistake in the 2017 town plan. No one on the planning commission was even aware that we had not cleaned up the policy section to conform with the land use sections. So it's sort of the reverse of what Dave's suggesting, is that the intent of the 2017 town plan was to limit rural area to home occupations. And so when we drafted the plan that we forwarded to you, we made that correction. But we got so much feedback on the changes of the definitions in the earlier part of chapter 9 that we said, all right, well, let's back off that and let's just strike all that language, and we'll go back to the drawing board on what the town wants to do in terms of short-term housing and short-term rentals, and we could consider if we want to make the change, because allowing home businesses and small enterprises in rural districts is a major change from the 2017 town plan. There was some language in there that the district seized on, and we lost that case. So we were trying to correct that, but just to have the town plan not be internally inconsistent. So we made that correction and we forwarded it to you. To go back now to re-implement that contradiction is really not very good, because the district is always going to take any contradiction and resolve it in favor of the applicant for the Act 250 permit. So that's all we were doing, was trying to correct that discrepancy. So if the select board wants to open up the rural area, that's an argument, but it's not, it shouldn't be based on what the language was in the 2017 town plan, because that language was a mistake.
But Dan, if you allow me to just push back a little bit, but the entire economic development chapter, all three of those clearly state it's allowed in the rural area. So select board didn't open up anything, Act 250 didn't open up anything. That was clearly stated in the 2017 town plan.
What page, Dave?
What's that?
What page are you referring to?
In the 2017 town plan, I'm referring to page 92. I mean, the whole argument about the rural enterprise was because it was no longer home, scale. And you've got two home scale, you got a home occupation and a home business.
What page are you referring to, that the language you're talking about? Because we certainly missed that too, if that was the case.
Page 2017 draft, page 92, economic development recommendations. Home occupations, businesses, and small enterprises as defined above are allowed.
That's right. Yeah, and what I'm saying is that language was a mistake. I'm just telling you, you can argue whether we intended that, but I'm telling you, I was on the planning commission and I drafted the 2017 town plan. That was a mistake. And so we were trying to correct that mistake. Now, that raises the question about the policy you're talking about, and that's a perfectly legitimate. I'm not sure I disagree with you, but this is a major policy change from what we understood the 2017 town plan to be. And the problem is, as long as you've got these discrepancies in the town plan, every case that goes to the district, we're going to lose.
So that's fine. So I mean, the policy decision rests in our hands, right? So you've heard the planning commission's, explanation that there was a mistake in the original plan that they're trying to fix in this plan.
That's what I'm hearing Dan say.
Yeah.
Kind of phenomenal that it was, that I wasn't reading town plans in that detail in 2017. Regardless, again, I may be, I differ on this than some of the people in the room, but Two Rivers are professionals, so I don't really feel like I want to start second guessing their.
Two Rivers isn't recommending a change.
That's Dan's first point on that part. The changes that we're talking about now, to be honest with you, my head's beginning to spin a little bit, and I feel like I may need to step back and, we had made a motion to go back to 2017. We've done that, and now we're being told that was a mistake because they made a mistake.
Well,
so
no,
how many times around we bounce this ball?
We're not suggesting, but the language is in there today, right? We're not suggesting, planning commission is not suggesting a change. I'm not suggesting a change, right? We're suggesting it stays as it exists today.
We're suggesting what?
It stays as it is written currently.
Versus
changing it to what it was in 2017.
Oh, no. See, this is the slippery slope.
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say, keep it as it was in 2017, and now all of a sudden I realize, no, that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about what they presented to us.
What's in the current draft, right? I think the argument you're hearing from me, you're hearing from the planning commission as well, is the language in the current draft is the intended language for the planning commission wanted to deliver to us. And they delivered that language to correct an inconsistency in the 2017.
Right. And it also got, that's from the town pushback.
Well, am I still on?
Yes,
Yeah, we had hearings, we had 2 hearings and nobody said boo about correcting that language. You know, we notified it, you know, all this stuff came up after the plan was passed to the select board. So, you know, if we now hear that you know, that people don't want to change and want to keep that kind of discrepancy in the town plan, which is just bad policy. You know, you shouldn't have a town plan with discrepancies. And so the fact that we would intentionally go back to a discrepancy is something that, you know, the planning commission would just be scratching their heads about, because I don't see any argument for that. Either if the select board doesn't accept our explanation, but I'm telling you, it was a mistake and we tried to correct it and we had a hearing on it. You know, we had a draft, we had a hearing on it, and the document we gave to you corrected that discrepancy. And it went a little further because we did try to put some language in about short-term rentals, which, you know, in retrospect was probably a mistake. We probably should have had more hearings on that. But and we're willing to revert to the original language in the 27 town plan on that part of the economic development. But we want to remove the discrepancy, because we're just, every case that comes before the district, we're going to lose.
Okay, Dan, thank you. I was in the room when the district sort of pointed out the discrepancies, so I'm very aware of what had happened. Dave, you had some comments?
So I would just say it was an oversight by myself and Sean that language is still in here at this point. You know, if we had caught that based upon the motion and my understanding of what the steps was for this draft, that would have said, you know, would have kept the 2017 language.
So the motion, right, the motion it specifically references short-term rentals, lodging, and rural enterprises. It's not reference.
I think he also references home businesses.
It does not reference home occupations, home businesses, or small enterprises. And that was the motion that was delivered, and that's, I think, exactly what Sean did.
I think that, and I clarified by asking the board if that included the home business and home occupation language. The direct answer back was yes. So
we amended the motion.
That's why the language is reverted back to 2017 in the home occupation. You asked me the question 20 minutes ago about home occupation, and we said, yes, we agreed that was to go back to 2017. You agreed with that.
So was your proposal that you want to change the policy?
The proposal is that it goes back to that home business and home occupation revert back to 2017, which includes it being, you know, allowed in the rural district, because that's what the language said. That was my understanding. If they want to fix the discrepancy, part of fixing that would be to simply add home business to the land use section. Instead of stripping it.
Policy. If that's the policy we want, but we haven't had that discussion yet.
So, in other words, Dan, please wait your turn.
All right.
I'm done.
Okay. Dan, go ahead, please.
All right. Well, if that's, you know, if that's the policy that you want, and you want to do it and not involve the planning commission in it, I guess go ahead. But it's disingenuous, I'm sorry, there's no better word, to suggest that the planning commission intended to, in 2017, to include home businesses and small enterprises in the rural district. That's just not true. That was a mistake. And you can either accept that explanation or not. But to now say, because of that mistake, you want to go back and ingrain that mistake in the policy and send the document back, you know, that's a major policy change, which we had no part of.
So
hold on. We're starting to get heated here, and at least Dan, you're using some fairly strong words very politely. So I'm pretty close to calling a timeout, and if nothing else, I need to sort of digest this and mull it over.
I think that's right. I'm done too.
I'm sorry, Dan?
I said, thank you. I agree with that and I'm done too. And to the extent that I got a little heated, I apologize.
No problem.
It's a good idea to take a break. I would like to use the bathroom.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let's take a break. I want to sit here and think about this for 5 minutes. So let's just take a quick 5-minute break.
I second the motion.
I don't buy Dan's apology. You know, I think it was a mistake, but so I'm trying to figure out how we can sort of just kind of get this resolved. There's a lot of work that has to be done that we're not going to do in this town, according to the town plan.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thought the concept of this compromise we worked out last time was to just
To clear that.
let most of
Clear
the
that
town
out.
plan go forward and we revert this back to.
So I have
If you look at the rest of them, it has.
a question.
That's
Regardless, because it feels like a little bit of I thought it was this, and I thought it was that. Regardless, we go back to the 2017 for the majority of.
The language we're
Right.
talking specifically about.
What is saying we can't fix the discrepancy? Like, why are we, do you see what I'm saying? Like, why, if there's a
Well,
true
part of the language,
policy
we would
discrepancy.
need to remove, again, we're having our meeting here, and I want to be careful. But if we can remove the volatile language, which put restrictions on housing
Volatile
from what we listened to.
But if
I
it's
think
a-
you'd take this to a hearing and see if it actually is.
Jim, we sat here and 40-something people were.
I know, I say we adopt it as is. We go to the next hearing, we find out what it is.
Dr. Pepper? I feel like the 80s just walked in.
This stretch.
It's even,
I mean, we're this close to the finish line, why make another change?
Well, I can think of what.
We're that close to the finish line, to get to the next hearing, why make another controversial change now?
I don't, okay. Again, you're using words controversial here.
This is just kind of.
I didn't see controversial
I'm just
written
gonna pick
there.
myself from my son
So.
by this work.
oh, no way.
It's controversial on this one.
I don't appreciate that, but I don't know why.
That's weird. Yeah, well, Bryce just sent me this, says buy me this. It says Dr. But it's for the Dr. Pepper label. I haven't seen Dr. Pepper in,
Oh, Dr. Pepper.
it's just the irony.
Dr.
The real Dr. Pepper.
Weird.
All right, wait a second. I want to give Sean my,
Yeah, that was a kind of a handful of things we might want to pass on.
yeah. But I need to get him, I can write myself a note.
Oh my God. I would like to talk about it and suggest that I want to say the language that is in 2017, I want to say the language that the planning commission, and I want to say the language that we are now resorting back to, which I believe is in 2017, but there's been enough discussion here tonight that are we adding words or not adding words, clarifying. If there truly was a mistake in the 2017 plan, I think it is indeed foolish to go back to continuing and propagating a mistake. But I also felt that the insertion, and Dan did mention that maybe it was not the right time, that there were restrictions added as well as the fix. And the community, in my humble opinion, reacted to those restrictions. We thought we were adding some flexibility, which I still believe very, very much so, that as Clyde's sort of telling us that there's not a lot of land available, so there's going to be pressure on the land that isn't conserved. And how are we going to sort of manage that pressure? I think that's a reality that's coming down the pike. I'm in shock when I have some people that have moved into my neighborhood and have spent more in running power to the new place than I did for the cost of the land and building my house. And they haven't built a house yet. I'd like to ask Dave, in turn, you, Sean, let's just look at the language that we're now finding ourselves sort of going around on tonight. Get a one-page document to us, and then let's just clarify it and decide if there's a sensible fix that respects what we heard from the town as far as restrictions and not restrictions. I thought we had it.
So I'm confused. What restrictions do we hear from the town that we haven't already?
I'm not going to, you keep saying that, then go back and watch the meeting where there's 30-something people.
But I heard it around lodging, I heard it around short-term rentals, and we fixed it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you, am I saying something wrong?
No, I'm just wondering what restrictions are left that we heard issues with that we didn't fix.
I'm not able to answer that.
Okay, that's fair.
I could though.
Okay.
I assume it's the home business.
Because now you can't, before the feedback that you got was in the rural area, you've gone from something that was permitted for 60 residents, being Wise Pines, in the rural area, to the language then popped up. And this is what does frustrate me a little bit, because everybody was here, and we were still talking about the rural area, and nobody perked up and said, oh no, that's not even allowed in the rural area. Nobody said that, and there was ample opportunity for people to say that. But a lot of the feedback is that, as far as lodging goes, you've gone from, in Haman's case, 5 cabins, or in Wise Pines' case, 16 guests, and you've limited this to 8 to 10. Well, the truth is that the only thing that's allowable is a home occupation, which is 50% or less of your home space. So, that is pretty, so we had last meeting a conversation here about how people reacted to the 8 to 10 and how there was consensus that would go back to 2017 without anybody truly realizing that, the language had been changed to not even allow a home business in the rural area. So, you know, and again, there was ample opportunity for those that supposedly were aware of that change to make a comment in public that, oh no, it's not 8 to 10 in a rural area, it's actually just only a home occupation. Yet last meeting, we were here talking about reverting back to the 2017 plan. The 2017 plan, you know, the environmental board made a determination that 16 guests could stay at Wise Pines. You know, under the 2017 plan, the idea was that we would go back to the 2017 plan, and yet that's not how this reads presently.
So, right, the motion I made was very specific. And I think if you heard me last meeting, I said we've got to be careful about unintended consequences, right? And this would be one of those unintended consequences of reverting something that the planning commission delivered that they want, they think is right, to correct a mistake, and reverting that mistake back.
Okay, Sean?
So, Phil, I just want to clarify what you were asking. So you basically want like a one-page document. I'll look at home businesses, what it says now, what it says in March 11th, and what it says in 2017, and then we can kind of see what it says basically in each version.
Yeah, and it's in the spirit of trying to say, okay, if there was a legitimate mistake in the 2017, what can we do to do that without causing more ripple effects on that part? And again,
I'm not clear though what you're looking for. So, you know, we know what the 2017 plan said. What's missing from that conversation is where you would like it to end up. You know, we can write a one-page document on,
right.
You know, but
And
where,
if in fact if we have language on the economic policy side, but we don't have it on the land use or vice versa, I'm getting confused as to where the language is. Do we need to add language to another chapter of the 2017? So yeah.
so there's a discrepancy, slight discrepancy between chapter 9 and chapter 1. So chapter 9 states that these things are allowable in land use. The land use chapter simply states that, you know, these are the things that we want to support: agriculture, forestry, et cetera, and home occupations are allowed in the rural area. At the time, the environmental board still ruled that the Wise Pines could go in. They just said there was a discrepancy, but they went with, you know, the economic chapter was fairly clear. So the planning commission's response to that was to take it out of the economic, just basically saying in the economic chapter, these things are not allowable in the rural area. And left the rural area as is, and that what's allowable there is home occupations. I think what I'm stating is that, you know, I thought it was fairly clear that these things were allowable in all districts except the river district, and what needed to be fixed was just simply adding home business to chapter 1. Based upon the feedback that we received and where we were trying to go with this, which was simply to revert back to 2017, then, you know, and I'm going to get disagreeing here, but, you know, what's missing is the home business in the rural area, the land use chapter.
Which is what I think Dan was saying as well.
Dan is saying that we never intended for home business to be in all districts. That was a mistake on our part, and we fixed it. And if you want to go back, then it's a policy change. But all I'm going to say is it is now much stricter than it was, you know, last meeting.
Well, last meeting, it's the same language as here that was. in the last meeting.
last discussion and last plan. And now on top of it, to add insult to injury, you throw a little salt in the wound, you've taken out the lodging aspect, so wherever that was allowed, you've now taken it out. So you might as well just, kind of spin on something on the ground. But, so it's,
I feel like I'm drowning in a vat of molasses.
all I'm gonna say is that this, based upon what I heard last meeting, that language would have reverted back to 2017 as well.
I do agree, we had an amendment to.
And then my comment tonight was you need to, oh, by the way, you need to add home business to the land use side. But under further review, though they've stripped that, they've stripped the economic chapter.
Okay, I'm feeling, like I said 20 minutes ago, that I'm not capable of sort of having a vision of where we should go right now. I honestly spent, as everyone else did, time with looking at the draft changes. I think we picked apart a number of words in there that we didn't understand for clarification. So I think we just need to come back to this as I'm kind of reluctant to, I'm not sure I can articulate back to what, but just to really try to wrap our heads around this and be clear, and try to blend the needs of what the planning commission would like to do, what the towns have reacted to, and make sure that we can do the best we can with what we have, and eliminate some of that flag. So if there's any, I'll just ask for any additional quick comments, and then let's just move on.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to cover it when we're fresh.
Stuart.
I just have a quick question. I've been looking for the definition of what a home business is and where farm falls in that. Does anybody have a quick outline of where farms fall into home businesses?
It's seldom separate. It's agriculture, it's a different definition.
Agriculture, I think, is pretty much anywhere where you can do it. As far, and John, maybe you could correct me here. I don't think there's any restriction on where you can have agricultural.
No, I think agriculture stands on its own, and home business stands on its own. Even though it may be a home business, it's under agriculture, rather than defined as part of home.
Home business and home occupations, commercial.
Yeah, okay. I've just heard the word commercial.
Farms are commercial. Farms are commercial, so I don't know where anybody thinks that a farm isn't commercial, but it is.
Yeah.
So if I'm producing a product and selling it, milk, for instance, a dairy farm with 100 milkers is producing over $500,000 in product a year. That's a major commercial operation.
But I think the intent, of the plan is to support agriculture wherever it can.
Agriculture doesn't even really fall under Act 250 review, so it's a benefit to agriculture.
Yeah.
But there are some parts of a farm that do fall under Act 250, and you're infringing on it on the limitation of housing. So if I have a farm with 45 acres for a vegetable operation, I need 20 workers. I need some housing for them, and I want to put it up on my farm. You just limited me. If I don't have at least X amount of acres, I can't do that.
Residential doesn't fall under Act 250 unless it's like 6 houses or something.
Yeah, I do think, I thought of agriculture that really stood alone on this. Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay, Sean, thank you for the work to carry us to this point. and I'm ready to move on.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. New business. I'm not going to predict this is going to be a quick one, but if it takes more than 5 minutes. Next Tuesday,
We're hurting if this takes more than 5 minutes.
I'm out of town, and I believe you're out of town.
You're back now, but I'm out of town.
Right. So we need to ask one of our esteemed colleagues up here to stop in and sign the warrants.
I would do that. I'm comfortable doing that.
Mary is going to do that.
I would rise to the occasion and volunteer.
That one went quick.
I want a diet one, I don't want regular. What happened to Diet Coke?
Different color can.
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay.
We need a motion.
Yes, you actually should. It should be in the minutes that you carry that power.
Well,
I'll move that Mary be authorized to sign the warrant. August 23.
Well, it's,
all in favor?
dance.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I'll write myself a note.
Please.
Yes.
Okay, the next item is not a very lighthearted one, but a very real one. I'm not sure where inflation is, 9 point something. Worldwide. But here, we've had, and I meant to sort of do my homework with the ARPA, the list of the 50-something ARPA, and where employee wages sort of reside. But tonight we're going to have a discussion of using some ARPA monies to address the inflation issue for town employees. We want to turn to Dave to lead us through that.
Yep, so it's fairly simple, straightforward conversation, yet it's a little convoluted just based upon how we come up with our cost of living adjustment for the employees every year. So each September or October, when we're putting the budget together, we look at actually the Northeast Consumer Price Index. It's a little bit different than nationwide, specific to the New England. And we look at how much it's increased over the year before. It's been as little as 0.8, been as high as 3.2, maybe is maybe the highest I've ever seen it. Last September, we set COLA for the employees at 4.65. That just kicked in. Here's part of the problem is that we set this in September, possibly October. Budget passes first week in January, and then it doesn't kick in until July 1st. So under ordinary circumstances, it's usually if there's a difference, it's maybe a 1% difference. It's not anything earth-shattering. It may go up 1% or 1.5%, and the increase that following July goes up. And there's not too much pain in between. So so we just kicked into 4.65. Last July 1st, the CPI, the increase for the employees was 3%, okay? So just to give you an idea where we've gone with this, the increase was 3% in July of 2021. The New England CPI was 4.3. So we were already 1.3% below. By June of 2022, at the end of the year, we're not at 9.1, but New England is at 7.6. So they had gotten that 3% increase. So by the end of the year, that's a 4.6% differential between what they had gotten for an increase in that July and where we ended up with for inflation come June. Just to give you another indication, when we set that 4.65%. When we were talking about that budget, and then there, the employee wages that increased 3% of that July. In November, when we were talking about the budget and we were looking at a 4.65%, inflation was already at 6%. So even if we had implemented the 4.65, we were still 1.5% shy. We were a full 3%, below what inflation was running. For the 12-month average, July to the end of June, inflation ran about 6.1% in New England. In the last 10 months, that's been at 6.5%. So even before we get to this 4.65%, again, we're down about 3.5%. We don't know July's as of yet, but June's was 7.6. The 4.65 is basically 3% below inflation, 2.95 exactly, basically 3%. What I simply suggest is a bump in, what we, instead of the 4.6, or to add to the 4.65 at a minimum 3%, which is kind of where we're at. I would even recommend 3.5% because we've already gone a year where they've basically been underwater by 3%. We will revisit this in the fall. Once you give, tough to take away. I don't really see us taking away the increase that we give them if it's a 3 or 3.5%. But I got two things to add to that. One, inflation. My understanding, gasoline prices have come down, but the core products are still high. And I got to admit, this hit me personally when I went to grab butter and it was close to $6. It shocked me. I hadn't bought it in like months, but it went from like $3.99 to $6. So it is real and it's out there. I would advocate for the 3.5%. To add to that, I would say that this is a group that, Clyde, this includes you, worked through the pandemic. We stayed open with the exception of 3.5 months. But that was only that we closed the doors and we were still functionable to the public. We still answered the phone. We still sent everything out. And the only reason we opened is because it was tax bill time and it was just too impossible to try and function with people needing to pay taxes, et cetera. So we opened back up. The other thing here is, this kind of, in my mind, we are being, I forget the word when you are somewhat forward thinking.
Proactive.
Proactive, thank you very much, being proactive. The other thing going on here, and we've been good, we did have some turnover last summer in the highway department. It's very difficult to hire. We have filled that. They've been with us for a year. The CDL drivers are very, very difficult to get at this point in time. So I think that the other part of being proactive is just saying, look, you've gone a year, we're still basically underwater here. We'll bump this up, realizing that we've all kind of worked through the pandemic here. And also just to say, we realize that wages are going up, and to be competitive with other people, may not be other towns, but particularly looking at the highway department, certainly being competitive with the likes of Pike and some of the other folks that are gobbling up. I'm not sure where they're going, but they are getting gobbled up, and CDL drivers are difficult to come by. So that's what I'm seeing, that's what I'm recommending. I think if we're running at 3.5% CPI, which would be a year over year, we can kind of hit the pause button. We may have to, adjust it again next July. But if we're at 5, 6, 7%, we're going to have to look at adding. We've already bumped it 3.5% here. We've got them up to the 7.5%, 8%. We're going to have to budget for, we're just going to have to keep an eye on it, but this will get looked at again September, October, November.
What kind of money are we talking about from a total amount? If we were to do every member of the staff?
So it's been a week since I've looked at the number, but I believe it's $55,000.
Okay.
including payroll taxes and other stuff.
And is there an impact on any benefits that are tied to the salary?
The employee taxes, and again, the pension,
funds,
the
yeah,
retirement.
pension.
So they and us end up paying a little bit more out of that.
Yeah.
So it's I'm gonna say like 5.5 by the employee based upon whatever their salary is. So it's a bump on both sides.
And when you use that number 50 or 55, were you thinking that was your thinking calculating that at 3.5 additional, or was that the 3% additional?
I will go on a limb and say the recommendation is 3.5%.
Okay.
On top of the 4.65 that just kicked in July, bringing us up just a little over the 7.6 to 8.
So my only, a couple of thoughts. In the manager's report, we're going to get hit with the increased cost of some of the projects that we have laid out, which we're using ARPA monies. But the biggest thing would be the comment that you made during your presentation is if we create this roughly 8.25 or 8.15%, and you add the 4 and the 3.5 together, what do we do the next year? I didn't quite catch that with you.
So we budget for that naturally. So let's just say so no matter what, we bump it 3.5%, we're going to need to budget for that $55,000 increase next year.
Okay.
But if the 3.5% year over year holds, that's what we would have had to budget it anyways.
Okay.
So if, year over year, so I'm saying 3.5% over the 4.65%. So come September or October, we're now looking at a new year over year. So if it's 3.5%, we need to budget the $55,000 for next year, and that's if it just stays at 3.5%, they really won't see much of an increase come next year because they've gotten a 3.5%. But either way, we got the budget for that $55,000 next year. Now, if it's a 5% year over year, that's going to be 1.5 on top of the 3.5 I've just discussed, and then we've got a budget for more like 70 grand.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I personally think it's a great thing to do, and that's part of what the ARPA funds were for, even though we're not going back in time. During our period, we're actually saying, to some degree, COVID has put us in this place, so let's use the ARPA monies. Okay, I was going to keep quiet and ask you guys to sort of have your questions and thoughts.
I have something. So what about, so let's say we agree to 3.5, which sounds fairly reasonable. What if, but that still leaves people, as you said, underwater for the previous year, right? Because they should have gotten more, but we didn't plan for that inflation to be as much as it was. So what about a bonus to make up for that?
For going back as well. So you could do a bonus for last year. So, you're talking more than the 55,000 at that point. So again, you're looking at 3%, or actually 3.1%. So you're looking at another 50 grand. So it would be 5,000 out of the ARPA money.
But it would just be a one-time bonus.
Instead of.
No, So you get the 3.5, which will be an ongoing thing.
Yep.
But that, going back, we do the 3% as a bonus, because they should have been getting that, but that would just be a bonus, which I see as a one-time.
Additional thoughts?
I like Mary's thinking on this one.
Because you know what, you guys did a heroic job, really, keeping Dan and Hall going, and keeping the work of the town going, as opposed to another institution in town. So.
Wait, but they're not included in this?
Are they included?
Going forward, they are. I would say that they lived under the same 3% last year.
I thought they, well, that's probably true, but I thought they had changed salaries independently. Did I get that wrong?
Last year, it was even 3% across the board. The year before, I think we had a very small, it was like a 1% or less, and I think that they did a 2%. But the year of the 3%, they followed suit.
So anyway, that's collateral damage, so I have to accept that. and-
So they are part of the 55,000.
Yeah, okay, whatever. I want to make sure that everybody else benefits. I know we want to punish everybody else for that obscene behavior, so that would be my yes. I would say yes anyway.
Well, you've got to keep reliable,
Yeah.
dedicated employees.
Yeah.
Because when you lose good help, it's hard to replace good help.
And the cost too of replacing people, so you hire somebody, you train them, it's expensive, and then they quit after a year for another job that pays better. I like the proactive thing.
Based on this discussion, we might have a couple of applicants right here. But, so first I want to say that I will recuse myself from the vote on this, right? So I'm just gonna have a couple of quick comments, and then I'll
Wait, recruit yourself for what, a bonus?
recuse myself.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, yes, yes, yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I won't be participating, but, so just a couple of comments, not hills to die on, but, you know, I understand the APRA money was that you didn't want to do something with it that required ongoing funding, right? It's kind of a one-time deal.
It
I'm not
wouldn't,
saying don't use it,
Right.
just saying that was one of the.
right.
The other thing I worry about is the optics, sorry, I'm losing my words. So, you know, it could become a controversial issue and, you know, listserv and everywhere else. If you're giving a sizable raise off cycle, right? In a time when the taxpayers probably, their costs are increasing as well, but their income probably isn't increasing at this kind of a rate. It can create bad optics and, you know, kind of collateral controversies, which is
I'm not.
something to consider.
I don't think we should make our decision
Right.
based
I don't
on
think
fear
we
of what's
should.
gonna happen in the listserv.
I
So-
agree, but what I think you do need to do
Yeah.
is have some kind of speaking points that says, you know, here's why we think this is important to do.
Yes,
Here's what we see in other towns, maybe we see that in other towns, the pay rates are far greater than our town, right? And that's maybe a good reason. So I think if you have those speaking points, it's helpful to quell any dissent that comes up.
well, for all the reasons that Dave has
Yeah.
enunciated.
And I can't read what else I wrote down here. Yeah, so I guess it's really maybe just the speaking points. How do you manage the optics and present, you know, a thought process that doesn't make it look like we're just throwing it around?
I'm looking at my own family, and one of them works for Dartmouth Health, and the other works for a higher media company. And there was no no adjustment for COVID during the time. One would think Harbor Health could have done it. They did it for the traveling staff, but it caused a lot of animosity amongst the staff that's every day. And Jim, something you just said echoes. I stopped by to visit someone yesterday. They just recognized their tax bill just gone up a little bit, and they are on fixed income, and they weren't ragging on anything. They were just sort of saying, "Gee, how do I pay this when my income isn't necessarily right?" So the optics are real on that part.
Would a compromise be just a flat bonus? So then it's not the increase, it's not both.
I would come down on the other side to let's do that 3.5% boost, and then tackle the budgeting issues, which will be real because now we're doing that. But that way, the paycheck on a per paycheck basis is you're seeing the impact, as opposed to the bonus, which goodness knows how it could be spent. Might be saved.
Well, that's not a test.
That's not a correlation.
I mean, if I got a bonus, I would enjoy that bonus. So I've never gotten a bonus in my life.
You get two guys. Guys.
Do we have any job openings here?
Let me just clarify, I deserve bonuses, I just never got it.
I'm dropping that now.
Okay.
So,
can I advocate for the bonus again? These are not high-paying jobs. You know what I mean? It's gonna come out of ARPA money. We got $1.4 million, and 100,000 is really peanuts.
What would $55,000 do? Because it's gonna be 55, right, essentially going forward. So what would $55,000 do to the tax rate for each 100,000?
Less than a penny.
So like to put it into perspective.
I can't, off the top of my head, I can't answer that. The budget total is 3.5 million.
So we're talking pennies. I mean, we're not talking hundreds of dollars.
It is just, so the 4.65% that we just kicked in was greater than the 55, was a greater. Now you're looking at 3.5 over that increase, so it might be similar, but I don't remember what it added to it, but I can't give you an answer in that frame, but it's going to be something, my gut feeling is something that we'll probably have to budget for anyways.
So let's just stay with the bonus for a moment. I don't know how that works. How do we identify who was paid from the start of COVID, who was on the payroll, and calculate some percentage based on that salary, or is it just a flat? It just feels like there's like questions to be answered, and I don't know how easy that would be.
Yeah, so off the top of my head, so we're looking at 3.1 over 12-month average. So, I think it would just be a straight 3.1. And then if someone's only been with us 6 months, it would be, 50% of that. It would be allocated that way.
And it would be of their July 1st, 2022 salary?
Yes. So the difficult part of this would be, it's not always beneficial to pay it out all at one lump sum. So it may be something that we think of like quarterly or something to that effect. Now, what you do when someone leaves is, I'm not entirely sure with that. But, therefore, it was kind of spread out over a year, and they get it quarterly, and it's, not sure I can say this in public, but, it's not quite the tax hit that you might get if you get it all at once. So,
Well,
but, maybe,
you're talking about taxes would be averaged out on an annual basis, and they're not, taxes aren't.
Right.
You're talking the income tax on the employee, right? If they got a lump sum bonus.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they get it quarterly, they pay less tax.
Look, we pay more now, but then you get it back later.
Yeah, I suppose, and again, we're not talking about a lot of sophistication as far as complexity in people's income. No, I don't mean that in any derogatory way, it's just how do we go forward? Should we break this down into, we have one motion to go forward with exploring both the bonus as well as the 3.5% increase. Do we need to stipulate anything about who gets what, or just leave that to the discretion of the town manager and the head of finance to work it out?
I like motion. It's not gonna be the motion that you just described.
I'm searching for some,
But I sense you're in a weakened state, so I'm gonna pound.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, and I do need to excuse myself after this.
The motion that we take half a Phil's salary and give it to.
I would like to make a
Do I have
motion,
to give up my free parking space?
yes, that we increase the town apartment employees' salary by 3.5% to account for inflation. So do it? Because I think, I made that because I think that's something we all agree on.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And one abstain.
Oh, yeah. Jim abstained.
I would clarify that seasonal employees, I think it's already been factored in. So when we're looking at
Permanent town employees.
permanent,
Full-time.
permanent, and permanent, full-time and full-time, half-time staff. So we've got half-time people that work full-time, half-time.
No, that's confusing.
Full-time,
So full-time
So-
permanent,
Those that work, half-time permanent and full-time permanent.
Right.
Seasonal, I think that their rates have been adjusted accordingly already.
And
You have that?
any new hire,
did you get that, and how you changed that?
So a new hire, depending on the position, would fall under, so we've got some new and some that have been there a while. So if someone new is hired, it would be a comparable competitive rate to someone that's been, may not be as much because they've all been here probably a year, but, it would be within that range. Is how we look at it.
Can we just say all permanent employees?
Sure. I'm good with that.
Okay. Did we vote? We said, yeah, you recused, okay.
Just finessing words. Okay, are we moving on?
We could talk about the bonus another time. Or not, we can let it go. This is a suggestion.
What's the pleasure of my colleagues here?
I think we moved to the town manager's update.
Okay, let's do that. I need to excuse myself for 30 seconds.
I think there's two here that are really kind of big, and I'll stick with just those. The Highway Department, Jenny Hill Road, I'm expecting that to be double of what we anticipated it to be. This is, we're going to have to see where we end up at the end of the year. We've known that we're gonna end up with ARPA, not ARPA, but with inflationary issues. We've already talked about Clay Hill. This is another one. We had another project planned for Town Farm Road. Good possibility we just skip that one and just stick with this one. This one, we do have $20,000 worth, well, $17,000 worth of grant money. It does go away if we don't do the project, so it needs to be done. We need to stick with the ditching schedule. It needs to be done by 2035. The ones that we're working on need to be done by 2025, so we'll probably stick with this. But this is what we're seeing at the moment, and with no real good answer other than we'll see what the economy continues to do, and maybe late fall that kind of changes. So this is what we saw. It looks like we will move forward most likely. Maybe will most likely be scaled down from a half mile to a third mile. Who's doing what remains to be seen, but I think that's how we'll probably proceed. Finance, I take this to be good news. Delinquencies are down to just about 7. We can't completely take them off because they haven't quite popped up on the VHFA application list. But we do have some that are active with VHFA that has been.
Out of the 7, some are active.
It's more like 9 with 2 questionable. So in here I got 9, possibly 7. So I think that it looks like it's going to end up being 7, but they need to finish the process here.
So they're pending, so you can't move.
Yep, we haven't been able to move them from one pile to the other yet. I will say with these individuals that VHFA has helped, I would say that this program has been a good program and has gotten the people in line where they would probably still be in the 2 tax sale pile. So this is this is an ARPA program at the state level. I think this is a good program and it's been beneficial to these residents. Last thing I'll just say is buildings and grounds. We added Maliki.
I'm sorry, I thought you were struggling.
He likes to be called Val.
Okay.
We call
Sorry.
him Val. That makes us even now. I interrupted you and you interrupted me.
Okay, maybe it's your turn, and then I'll do it.
So this we added for this year, and it's just been really beneficial to the buildings, I think, because it frees Rob up to concentrate on, he did some work over at the rec center. He did some work over at the historic building, painting the front before the 4th of July. If we didn't have Mal, Rob would be kind of balancing that along with off-mowing cemeteries and other things. We've been able to, not as much as I'd like to see, but it will take time to expand on Sumner Falls, but he's been over there. So that's just been a positive all around. And the next, he had the darn machine out here, he's gone somewhere, but we do plan on doing a pie above the roof line here at Game Hall to get that cleaned up. Is kind of his next.
Can I ask a question very quietly? Does Rob have his lift operator's license?
You do not need a license for the lift operator, but you do.
I can use whiteout on mine and put his name on it. That would be helpful.
But he does have the VOSHA equipment.
Okay. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank goodness for the ocean equipment. You've got to have that, otherwise you'll get busted. But if you need a license, I have whiteout.
Okay. I'll make a copy and we'll send it over to him. That's all I got.
Wow.
And we finished correspondence.
I feel like we've been through the ringer.
I'm not going,
So I just, we can adjourn momentarily. I just had a couple of future agenda items, future agenda items. So I thought it might be beneficial for us to, at some point, to talk about the town meeting, to make sure we have a good plan to move forward with a live meeting this year, so we don't kind of get caught, right before the meeting, having to make a decision to postpone or not postpone. So I think it's just worth having a discussion at some point. And then I wanted to have a discussion about potentially doing a community service award presented by the town to skunk hollows and BGs for their years of service for the community.
Oh, that's really, really nice.
Considering they'll both probably be gone in the next year.
Oh, that's a really good idea. So when would we get it at town meeting then?
I think we'd give it at a select board.
Okay.
what are you calling it?
I mean, the wording can change. What my brain is calling it today is a community service award. But just some, I'm thinking of like a plaque that recognizes their years of service to the community.
Well, we have the Conservation Commission plaque upstairs.
You just scratch it up.
Well, we can.
You point out.
It's right out there.
There we go.
Recycle, reuse, recycle.
Sean had the sticky notes.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, thoughts?
Time for
We have a
dinner.
motion to adjourn. So moved. And we don't need a second, correct? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Shut down. With the cameras off. Okay.
Now it is. Let me